Good morning, afternoon, whatever time of day it is. I just finished a stream with Cape Atheists from Cape Town, South Africa. And Atheist Republic of Cape Town. And sitting here on the shores of Casco Bay, Cape Elizabeth, this was a sort of a Cape to Cape thing. It was a good talk with Dean Kruger, and I thought I would just sort of present that as a thing, just to share with you guys, and we'll just see if we can't do it. Might take me a second to get it all together because I am a clumsy little person, but we can do this. So, oops. We'll just do that, and we'll do this. And we'll just go to, let me get myself out of here. Maybe I won't get myself out of here. Maybe I'll just sort of sit here. I don't know. We'll just go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday afternoon Meet the Atheists segment. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Stephanie, which I'm sure you guys have all seen online. Good afternoon, Stephanie. How are you doing?
Good morning and good afternoon from Cape to Cape. You're looking at, we were talking earlier, you can, I'll disappear for a second. You can see the waves of the Atlantic washing up on Cape Elizabeth, Maine. That's the entrance to Portland Harbor, which you can't see because of the snow. It's snowing here, so bring a little bit of snow to the southern hemisphere. I hope it's nice and warm where you are because it ain't here.
Today's a little bit overcast. I mean, I didn't see the sun, but generally this time of year it is pretty hot. You know, it's always above the 30 degrees. I'm not sure what that is in
that's in America.
yeah. So you know, let's jump straight into it, and let's talk a little bit about your journey with religion and you know, how you came out on the other side. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your religious background? Did you grow up in a religion? You know, and what was that like in your formative years?
I grew up in a family with a very strong tradition within the Methodist Church,
right?
In New England. My grandfather was a Methodist pastor. My dad was. My brother was. Spent most of his career, most of his life in social work.
Right.
But in his later years, he went back to the ministry and had a church right here in Maine, actually, and on Peaks Island, which is in a little nook where we live, Casco Bay.
Right.
My brother-in-law had a career in the church, and 2 of his children went into the ministry. So yes, I'd say there were my dad's library were full of various tracts, of the church, of his day. Paul Tillich was in there. I'm trying to remember some other theologians. Aquinas was in there. A whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, I had access to it, and also was rather immersed in it. My father was actually had a special church appointment to Morgan Memorial Goodwill Industries, which my grandfather founded.
Right.
And so he was not in while I was growing up. He wasn't in active. Didn't have a parish. Didn't have a church. When my brother and sister, who are considerably older than I, he was in active ministry. So yes, I did grow up in the church.
It's always the pastor's kids, eh?
Yeah, it's always preacher's kids. It's always the PKs, Oh, you're a PK. Oh, I guess you understand what the drill is.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because, it's weird growing up as a preacher's kid, because especially for kids whose parents are in active ministry, they're the pinnacle of the Sunday gathering, right? They're sort of the pastor and his wife and children and all of that. It's like, well, you got to be this role model of some nature, and it's just, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. Also, it must put a lot of it must put a lot of pressure on the child to be this paragon of achievement and everything.
But kids are kids.
Yeah.
Kids are kids. Kids do, and we're all. Everybody's a unique individual.
Yeah.
My sister's oldest, as they say, my nephew went into the ministry. His sister, the 2 middle kids did not, and the youngest did.
Right.
So she's Becky. Actually, Becky just got her. Just got her master's theology. Just graduated from theology school.
Interesting.
After several interruptions, but the tradition, I guess, as such, that I came from was one rooted in the social gospel. The Methodists are not quite salvation by grace alone. The works are part of it, not so deeply a part of works as a way to salvation as say the Catholic Church, but the Methodists are an offshoot of the Anglican Church.
Right.
Charles and John Wesley were focused on a flavor of Catholicism, right? Except no Pope. We just had the King. God save the King, and heaven bless Maple Leaf River. Whatever.
Listen, what's that saying? How do you know that denomination X is wrong? You ask denomination Y.
Right, splitters.
Yeah.
First Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, Third Baptist Church. It's all like it used to be just one. but we need 3 to accommodate everybody else because, I don't know what it is, but God didn't really spell out just exactly the right way to worship.
Yeah. if that book is the work of the unquestionable ultimate authority, then I'm not impressed because it's not very clear.
No, there's a lot of latitude in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it wasn't not a particularly fundamentalist.
Right.
Bible is literal Word of God type of thing.
Yeah.
More of the kinder, gentler bit of Christianity.
The long ago and far away. It was like that way back then. This is how it's now type of Christianity. I get it.
And with a focus on well-being. God was central to human progress, to all of this. That there's my grandfather's big saying. I never knew the guy. He died in 1942, but his one of his aphorisms was, "There can be no failure when working with God."
Right.
So the working part was key. I mean, you're not. It's not you get to sit around on your duff.
Yeah.
But you need to be doing the work.
Right.
You need to be doing the Lord's work in order to be there.
Yeah, it sounds like a more, like you said earlier, more forgiving and pliable and flexible type of religion than the fundamentalist type that you would get in the South, for example. But what to describe for us your personal journey of deconversion? What was some of the key factors or experiences that ultimately led you to question your religion and in the end abandoning it?
Well, I think it's I don't think I ever bought into it, or at least I was told. I was told all of these things. I learned all of these things. But the supernatural never really caught on. I mean, Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, all these mythical creatures that a child grows up with, is lied to about. They didn't seem real. There's always a little bit of a suspicion that this can't be real. And the other thing that was really probably a special case for me was my own feeling at a very early age that this world was off somehow, or my world was off somehow. And being told that if you pray really hard, you're working with God and there can be no failure. But when I was about 3.5 or 4, I had a very intense feeling that I was not who everybody thought I was when they looked at me, because I felt that my gender did not match my physiognomy. So I was a trans kid, and in the 1950s, in a religious household.
That must have been hard, right?
And as a kid the first time I expressed that was my mom praised me for doing something and said, "Good boy." And I said, "No, girl." And that started a real cascade of, oh shit. Who is this child?
Yeah.
There was very, very little support in that era, and very little understanding of that on any side. And of course, I'm a little kid. My mom is a 46-year-old woman at the time, 44-year-old woman
Right.
at the time. And so it was an interesting journey. For me, it was, that's impossible, and you are impossible, you know.
Right.
So for me, it was working towards resignation.
Right.
That this is, you know, this is your fate, this is the way it's going to be, and all of this. And despite every entreaty to every supernatural force known to man,
Yeah.
there was no way out. So there was, I
Right.
grew up with a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
That led me away from the goody, pray hard, and things will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the acceptance of things I can't change.
Right.
You know, you pray for that grace and pray and pray and pray, and it doesn't go away.
It doesn't come. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But then you will also be fed platitudes like, you know, God works in His own time, you know, or you were just not praying hard enough. There's always a loophole. There's always a loophole. You know, it's such.
well, God took His own sweet time of bringing me to a certain level of knowledge that no, in fact, this can change, and you're fine, and you're not impossible.
Right.
I mean, granted, it took 40 years, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a little bit of patience paid off in the end.
But this is the thing I find so fascinating about the control mechanism in religion, is that it tries to be totalitarian in its scope. So it will regulate every single thing, from your diet to your behavior to your relationships. It even tries to regulate your sexuality and the way that you express yourself. And all of these things are used as a control mechanism, simply to create this homogeneous sea of sheep that don't question or think about things too much or too hard. You also get that sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have this. I have my this. This is the Bible that was presented to me at my confirmation.
Right.
In Palm Sunday, 1965. It says on the frontispiece there. So I still have that.
Yeah.
And it was about 1966 or so when we would go in. We lived in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, and the church we attended was not a suburban church. It was the church that my grandfather founded in
Right.
the city of Boston, and it was in a particularly mixed and dynamic neighborhood in the city of Boston called the South End, where there were people of different races, different ethnicities, etc. So it was not your typical lily white suburban church.
Right. Right.
So in that sense, I think that was a valuable experience.
Right. Right.
Because James Baldwin quite famously said the most segregated place in the United States is church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And
I remember hearing that.
That was not my experience, because you know, I had a number of friends and, you know, other kids who were attending church of different races than mine, different ethnicities than mine. So that was a good experience for me.
Yeah.
It taught me a lot about how people are different. Also taught me a lot about how I could be different.
Right.
Now, this wasn't God. This wasn't God telling me that. This was people telling me that. This is community telling me that. And so when I was about 13, I would continue to go in.
Yeah.
But rather than attend the service, I'd go to Sunday school. But rather than attend the service, I spent some time doing walkabout throughout the city.
Right.
I'd go to a park. I'd walk around, go to a park, and go to different churches, and see what they had to say.
Right.
And I would report back. Well, which one did you go to? Well, I went to Park Street. Which one did you go through? Oh, South Meeting House. Oh, which one did you go to? It's like the cathedral down the street. It's like, so I just wander in, and people would look at this 13, 14-year-old kid and go, what the hell are you doing here? And like, where are your parents? Well, they're at church. It's like,
but this is also the thing, Stephanie, that I want to mention is, you didn't have an experience of your religion being insular, like I did, where they tried to isolate you from from hearing other diverse opinions, and they do it purely as a control mechanism, because as soon as you encounter different ideas, your mind opens up to new possibilities, and then you start questioning things, and that questioning ultimately leads to you questioning the square that you started on. So yeah, it's very very.
So I was lucky in that, struggling through my own personal work.
Right.
Worker growing up, and struggling through the faith. The conversation didn't stop. At least my parents were not bound and determined to break me.
Right.
And there was one incident I won't ever forget, and that was my brother had gone to an old institution of a preparatory school or high school, secondary school, called Taft, which was a prep school for Yale, and at the time, I think it still is an all-boys school. And my dad, in the worst way, wanted to send me off to the Taft school, and my mom informed me of this, and she was the only one of my two parents who knew my situation intimately, because I had told her.
Right.
And I don't think she felt comfortable speaking with my dad about it. She did speak with her sister about it quite a bit. I found out later in life. But I said, you can't do that. You can't do that to me. And you know why? It's just not going to be good. It's not going to be a good outcome. So I'm going to public school here in where we are, and let's just keep it that way, shall we?
Right.
Unfortunately, she listened to me.
So
convinced my dad it would have been a bad idea to send this.
No, definitely not a good idea.
So, I mean, high school and junior high school and the whole puberty thing is tough enough as it is, but that would have been just pure hell.
Yeah. So was that what ultimately led you to question the belief? You say you never bought into it from the word go, just going through the motions because it's more of a traditional and cultural experience, and
to keep the social environment, the family environment on an even keel. No, it was the exploring thing
Yeah.
that going to different congregations, listening to different presentations, and talking about it, because again, was the that was the milieu of we would have around the dinner table conversations
Right.
about faith, about Christianity,
Mm.
about God, because that was pretty much the had been my family's life.
Right.
But it
Right.
was but open to
Discussion and dialogue. Yeah.
discussion and approaching it on it both from a faith point of view and from an intellectual point of view. Like,
Right.
how does this work?
Yeah.
And
Fascinating. Yeah.
reading other texts and reading other things, just like
Yeah.
I learned or came to the belief that all of these things are stories that people
Yeah.
made up to explain things that they didn't understand.
Exactly. I mean, it was exactly, for me, it was more or less the same process, but for me, it was encountering a completely different religion. When I encountered another religion in my life, I
Right.
just said, fuck it, this, they can't both be true at the same time, but they can both be wrong at the same time. And that was it. I was out.
Yeah, and it was a similar kind of thing. When I was
Yeah.
when I was quite young, when I was little, there was a Mormon family that was across the street, and the two uh, two of the kids were twins, and we were good friends, and they had really weird ideas. And and it's just, that was like, huh? What do you mean you don't what do you mean you don't want a Coca-Cola? Oh yeah, it's against my religion. It's like, what?
But it's the religion is the fun police in my opinion. Everything that's fun or that people can derive some kind of enjoyment out has to be regulated, has to be prescribed, has to be prohibited. It's crazy. And it comes from such a prudish bunch of sinister old men sitting in high towers. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but there are stories. I just came to the conclusion these are stories. Whether it's the Bible or the Book of Mormon or the Bhagavad Gita, the
Exactly.
Mahabharata, the writings, teachings of Lao Tzu, the literature of Confucius.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're all stories, but this is
Yeah.
what people do. People
Yeah.
make shit up.
Yeah.
To make to put some sort of
Yeah.
of an envelope around the feeling that all people have of something greater than you.
Yeah.
What I forget who the philosopher was, but first named the numinous, that feeling of awe. I mean, this what's behind me here? That's awe. I look at that, and on a cold winter's day on the coast of Maine at high tide, the ocean sweeping in. It's just it's so awesome to see. And that sense of wonder is what the stories are about.
Exactly. And you'll find that sense of wonder even in the smallest child. It's a natural part of our human makeup. And in a sense, I also think that religion has some form of evolutionary benefit to our species, because for some reason we are deeply insecure with ignorance. When we find something that we cannot explain or understand, we develop this deep-seated insecurity, and we have the need to always feel safe and secure. So inventing a bad story to explain something is better than not having an explanation at all. And I think that is where it's rather obvious when you think about religion in those terms, that you can see how you've got, wherever a seed is planted, a religion sprouts up, and it's never two of the same tree. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's also the element of mortality. We realize that this doesn't last. What's next? And rather than saying, well, maybe nothing, maybe this is it. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around the fact that, well, we're not here forever. This world isn't here forever. This universe may or may not be here forever, but we're not going to see it forever.
Right. And the thing is, rather than enjoy the trip, the destination, the journey, their focus is on the destination and the next trip. And in having that focus on arriving at the destination and the next trip that they're planning, they're completely shitting all over the journey, not enjoying it, not taking all the scenery in, feeling the wind blow in your hair. Such a waste. I can speak to you forever, but I want to keep this on track, because otherwise it's going to be like a 5-hour interview.
Wow, we want to do that. I might have to go shovel at some point.
Let's talk a little bit about activism and organizations involved in activism. Are you personally involved in any kind of activism? People always envision, when you say the word activism, people think of protesters chaining themselves to the front gate of some evil corporation. But it's more,
I never did that.
Me neither. But it's being vocal and being visible about, the causes and the things that you champion.
Well, my family was very much committed to various forms of activism because of, again, that focus on the social gospel, making this world better. Is a part of is a devotional process. So my sister and the man who became her husband were very active in the early 60s. Again, my sister was 15 years older than I. So she was of an age that, it's almost a generational split within a single family. But she was of an age to be very active in the civil rights movement. Northern white girl goes to Augusta, Georgia, and works in a black settlement house, which was like, because the cause of racial justice and the desegregation of the South. And I know this might be a sensitive topic for me to be speaking of in front of a South African audience, but we had our own struggle with apartheid, and we didn't call it that. But it most certainly was. I am old enough to remember going to visit my sister in Augusta and seeing the stark separation between people with really common heritage and, in some respects, a common language, a common faith. That might be one of the more, that might be a dichotomy between our two nations, because you are a multicultural nation, and while you could say that African American culture was separate from white culture, they're almost so artificially, because after 300 years of that system, we all read in the same book. We all speak in the same language. We all doing the same things. And the only thing that was dividing white folk and black folk was the issue of power.
Yeah.
On the basis of race. So she was very active in that. I was active when my time came, when I was, in my late teens, protesting in the United States involvement in Southeast Asia and Vietnam.
Right.
Because that was a hot war, and friends were dying.
Yeah, lots of folks lost their lives in that conflict.
And it was as the senator from Massachusetts and the guy who ran for president and served as Secretary of State here said, "How do you ask a man to be the last to die for a mistake?"
Yeah,
that was John Kerry.
That's powerful stuff.
And
we had the same. We had the same thing in apartheid South Africa. There was a country to the north of us, Angola. They were involved in some civil war, and there were and the South African government also sent a lot of our young men to go and fight up there. And the thing is, military conscription was mandatory. So if you are a white South African male, as soon as you finished school, you had to go for 2 years of military service. I was fortunate in that the year that I was supposed to go was the year that they scratched that. So I missed it really by the skin of my teeth. I'm telling you, it's
conscription was a thing when I was growing up as well, and
right,
the draft was a thing. And
right. Because we always hear. I mean, when I think of the American military, I think of it. It's a place where people who can't get a job go. And I didn't really, didn't really think of it as. I mean, that's obviously a trope that we learn from consuming that kind of American media that we see here. It's always. We're going to fix you. We're going to send you to boot camp. We're going to send you to the army, and that's where you're going to end up. But we don't always realize, how big that industrial complex is. That is the military, and we went through exactly the same thing here. It's pretty scary what people who think that they have the Lord on their side can get other people to do. I'm telling you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that was that as far as activism goes, that was probably my first thing, and then then it was just basically going to college and finding a job, afterwards, which has nothing to do with my college degree. I wound up falling into sailmaking as a trade, making sails for sailboats, and racing them, and preparing them and preparing sailboats and racing sailboats and that kind of thing. That's basically been what I've done since I was in my 20s.
Wow.
Up till now. So see, I've got my first place mug here from 2022. I think
you were sailing in the regattas and all these different competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, it's interesting.
But my next phase of activism was later on when I came up and started to transition as trans. Right. That was, but that was like involuntary activism because it's a radical. It is a radical statement. If anything, it's like, oh, you're doing what, huh?
Yeah.
Especially within that field. So it's sort of like just being alive is a form of activism.
Right. This is the funny thing is I don't remember. It was a while ago, and I don't remember who wrote the article, but somebody was drawing a parallel between atheist activism and LGBTQ activism, and they made this list of basically things that the atheist community can learn from the LGBT community when it comes to activism. And the funny thing is the first thing that they mentioned was visibility. They said when when people encounter any kind of marginalized group face to face, they interact with people, and they get to talk to them and realize that they're just another human being like you and me. They have an authentic interaction. It generally tends to take those stereotypes and fade them away. And it was I wish for the life of me I can remember where I read this, because it was I still remember the impact that it had on me, because I was going like, hey, wow, like that's it's actually so true. And the thing is, it was towards the end of the century, the end of the previous century, the LGBTQ community stopped apologizing and stopped being apologetic and hiding. And there were, even in your country, there were riots and people just said like, enough is enough with this kind of discrimination. And it all comes from a place of ignorance and fear and religion,
Yeah, that goes back a ways. LGBTQ activism, most famously in the United States anyway, started 1966 with the Compton cafeteria riots in San Francisco. And
that was also started by a trans woman, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it?
Well, it was trans women mostly. Trans women, drag queens, drag kings would hang out at this cafeteria, and at the time there were laws against cross-sex dressing, so you could be busted if you wore clothing that was more commonly associated with the opposite sex.
But wait a minute.
So the cops would regularly.
I have it on good authority that Jesus wore a dress, Stephanie.
So do I. But so the cops would regularly bust these people, and at one point they just said, well, "This is bullshit." They started fighting back against the cops, and it turned into a big deal. Similarly, Stonewall, which was a couple of years later, I think, in New York, where it was. Gay, lesbian, and trans people, probably the most prominent of whom were Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson.
Right, I've heard that name, Marsha P. Johnson, before.
So they, but that was one phase. There's always, in any kind of liberation movement, there are phases that these things go through, and the visibility there were in both of those cases were cops busting heads. Meanwhile, in the LGBTQ community, all through that time, there were these places like Stonewall or like the Compton cafeteria or gay bars or all of this, where the certain subculture was operating all along, and then came AIDS.
Right.
It's the history of LGBTQ activism is one of profound sadness, and also working towards acceptance. And again, as you said, visibility is part of that. Visibility doesn't have to be throwing bricks at the cops. Visibility can just be living.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's activism is what one does, especially once one is kind of forced to. I mean, I don't imagine that too many people in the sailing world is very, very small,
right?
And it's made up of a certain social class too. There are monetary considerations. So in the sense that if there are gay people, if there are people who you wouldn't expect to see on a sailboat, just their being there
Yeah.
if they're good, because the key thing is this is a sporting competition, so you can't
push it. Yeah.
you gotta do the stuff. But it puts it on a human level, a person to person level, and people say, well, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works, but it is also a double-edged sword, because some people who are adamantly opposed to the very notion of different sexualities, different views of gender, or different experiences of gender, remain closed-minded and want to be, and want to do that pushback. And that's been happening a whole hell of a lot lately, to all across the world, and to my great dismay. I was pretty quiet in such activism as I had, aside from just, again, living.
Right.
Until 2018, when the shit started hitting the fan as regards to trans people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so strange. There's so many different responses to people who do not fit the cookie cutter mold, which from the age from a time that I could remember knowing my own mind. I didn't fit into that typical suburban white kind of mold, like I was the one who had all these weird interests and different likes and approaches, and it was always frowned upon, and I could never understand what was the aversion to not being part of that homogenous river that ran through the entire community, because and ultimately I realized it's just fear. People fear things that they don't know and don't understand, and as soon as you make that human connection with somebody and they see, hey, fuck, this is just another person just like you and me, just XYZ is different about them, all that fear evaporates, and all of a sudden people become more open-minded. Now, this is a vast generalization. It doesn't happen in all cases. In some cases, people just, I don't know. There are some people in this world that no matter what you do, it adds propellant to their hate. There's no amount of talking and that'll ever change some people's mind. But that is the activism that I think makes the biggest impact. The only sad thing about it is that it has unless you have a very big stage and a very big audience, it has impact only on a small circle, the immediate circle of people that you're speaking to. So that is the only disadvantage with that. But sorry, I was going to ask you in terms of you sound like you just let go of religion very early in life, and it didn't really stick. You were like a non-stick frying pan. The egg just rolled right out of you.
I had an excuse too. I had a really good excuse, because when those races happen, they happen on Sunday.
Good. But I always like to ask our guests about the emotional impact that religion has on people. And throughout the years, we've had people tell us about there's a central theme of people firstly living in fear, having unrealistic expectations set on them in terms of behavior and social contracts and all of that, and then also intolerance and ignorance. Intolerance can manifest in so many different forms, but it's almost always has some flavor of religious element to it. Did you experience any negative impacts that religion? I'm sure you can describe loads of experiences throughout your life where people, religious people, have had a negative impact on you, but I'm referring specifically to just the subtle ways that religion grooms your mind to think in a certain way.
Well, I think I broke free early enough that I stopped letting God bother me.
Right.
And focused on, for myself, focused on the feeling of the numinous and appreciating that in all these ways. And in my negotiation of that, that's what I expressed to my religious family. So it's like, right. Well, she's not really an atheist because she has this feeling of the divine. Yeah. Let's call it the divine. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can call it the divine. We can call it the numinous. We can call it any of these things. So it's like I don't like the word spiritual.
Yeah, me too.
But it's like translating that experience, which I do think all humans share, just that sense of wonder. All humans share it. Yeah. You want to call, if some people will call that the whole look at the trees phenomenon. Well, that's God. Look at the trees, or look at the ocean. Look at all this. Well, it's not. But if you want to think it is, but if you want to think it is, that's fine with me. I don't really care that much. What I do care is, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Do you want to share the joy, or do you want to share pain?
Yeah.
Without compassion. Do you want to inflict pain on people without compassion for their situation and the way they view the world? Right. I mean, if you're so goddamn dogmatic, pardon my French, I'm a sailor. What do you want?
You can speak any fucking language that you want to. We don't care.
But if what your religion compels you to do is regiment others' thoughts into your particular channel, and using your mouth and closing your ears to other people's thoughts and feelings, then your religion is garbage.
Yeah.
You got the wrong, you're off on the wrong tick here. This doesn't work.
It's like some of the critics of the Islamic prophet, I think it was his wife actually, or his concubine at the time, said, I always notice how the will of God aligns very perfectly with your will.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy how that works, eh?
Yeah.
So let's talk about just some misconceptions or stereotypes that you encounter about atheism, and how do you address that when you get y'all just want to sin, and y'all just want to live a life of sin and be left to your own devices. That's why you don't want to believe.
How can you be happy without God? How can you be happy without the knowledge of being saved? It's like, at which point I go, I don't know, look at the trees. It's look around you. I can be happy when I find a more peaceful world, when I find a more compassionate world, when I find a more beautiful world, when I devote myself to conserving this little blue marble for generations that will be here beyond me. I want to see more happiness here.
Yeah.
Because as far as I know, that's all there is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's that gives me happiness. That gives me purpose. It's the misconception I think that a lot of theists have is that a, a life without a God belief, it cannot be meaningful.
Yeah, that's such
When
nonsense.
that's not true.
Exactly.
It,
Ultimately, I think that meaning, the meaning that word, what has meaning, it's subjective. My neighbor,
yes.
3 apartments down, finds great meaning in tending her garden and looking after her pets. And it's basically the reason that she gets up in the morning, and she loves doing that. It gives her great meaning. Somebody else might find meaning in reading books and being of service to other people in the community. It's subjective. There's I don't know of anybody that could tell me what is an objective, universally applied set of fulfillments that besides, not being hungry, not being cold, and feeling safe. I mean, there's not much beyond that you can claim exclusively is a universal objective thing. So meaning is completely subjective, and we fabricate it as we take steps on our journey, and it changes. What was meaning in
Right.
my life when I was 20 is definitely not meaning in my life now that I'm 50. That things definitely have shifted.
I think that a theistic worldview that leads you to, I hate that word too, but a theistic outlook that leads you to think that this life is meaningless, and the
Yeah.
life that has meaning this is not my home. My home is is with God.
Yeah.
It's postponing meaning. It's not, if that's the case, if I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger traveling through this world of woe, and and there's a better world to which I go, then that's given up
Yeah.
on the present time.
Exactly. And what is this? Isn't there some scripture that says your deeds are but filthy rags or something? And it creates this.
Yeah, there is.
It creates this mindset of people that they take this world, all the beauty and nuance and essence that we have put into building a society on this one particular planet in the universe, and they just wipe their feet on it. It's a doormat. It's a doormat that they wipe their feet on when they step through the door to the next place. And that kind of thinking also creates problematic ways in which people approach the environment that we live in. The caring for the planet, like you said, leaving some kind of legacy for future generations where people can actually breathe the air and drink the water. You would think that those things, but no, it's like, it's just a temporary inconvenience being on this planet and being in this, this current human condition.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's why my approach is not to break religion, but to break that mold of thinking that the here and now has no essential meaning to it.
Yeah,
as you say, it's subjective, but still, there are meaningful things one can do to leave this a better place.
Right.
When you go, no matter where you're going, if you think you're going to heaven or hell, that's on you. I don't think that's for real.
Yeah.
But don't treat this place like a garbage dump.
Yeah, exactly. It's that as right wing as she is, there's this one particular clip where Anna Kasparian goes off on these people who are anti-abortion, and the way that she ends it off is just saying, like, I don't care about your religion. I don't care. I'm so sick of having these conversations, because having these conversations prevents us from getting to dealing with real world problems. And she loses it. She goes off. That's the thing, I think. It's like you say, you sound to me like a woman of action. You want to get shit done. And that's what I love about, it's a vast generalization to say that all atheists are like that. But the majority of the people that I encounter have got this fire in them, and this passion for the truth and for, just equity and authenticity. And I really love, encountering that in people. And the thing is that it's the complete opposite to the framework of religion, where it does not value and appreciate individuality, and to that extent. So very interesting indeed. I want to also just be mindful of our time. Like I said to you earlier, I can talk to you for hours. So I want to ask you in closing, just to give us an insight into how you deal with pushback from the religious environment that might be around you and people that you encounter online. Have you mellowed with, like me, I've mellowed with age big time. I used to be very, very firebranded out there, like, take your Jesus and shove it up your ass. And, and I was like very firebranded. Nowadays, I'm more, more into, how can we say, having reasoned discussions and actually speaking to people and getting the opposing view. But how do you deal with pushback? And then in closing, if you could also tell us where people can find you on social media. Sure. I know you've got a YouTube channel. I'll post a link to that in the description of this video on YouTube, so people can go check that out as well. And
Oh shit! I should have clicked the stream this to your audience thing. Now that we're closing, I didn't know. I forgot to even check that out. But yeah, absolutely. I have a YouTube channel. It's at Tapiocaweasel. And maybe I'll download this and post it as a
You're very welcome to.
Didn't do it with your permission, of course. As far as pushback is concerned, I because of the nature of my upbringing and stuff, I had to make those negotiations early.
Yeah.
And so closing off theists would have been a huge mistake, because that would have meant, of leaving my family, basically.
Yeah.
That would have been very, very difficult for them and for me. And I know that others struggle with that. Some people are brought up in a very, very fundamentalist. If you're not following the word of God, you're not staying in this house. Get the hell out.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah. A lot of those people are have more of the firebrand thing. But for me, I don't mind engaging with theists.
All right.
But again, on the basis of, what do you do with your God belief? Like, my nephew has a parish in upstate New York. Three churches in upstate New York. So every Sunday he goes to a different congregation, one way or another, does the thing.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you there, because this is something that's always fascinated me, and I could never figure it out. What is upstate New York? Is that the northern part of the state?
Yeah, it's the northern part of the state. Yeah.
Okay, because I always hear people speaking about upstate New York like it's a completely different state.
Up around Lake Champlain, the Adirondacks, that area that's outside the beyond Albany.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries. What I was saying was, he he has these 3 parishes,
Mhm.
and what he tells the people in the pews, he doesn't preach on his aunt every week, but he preaches acceptance. He preaches that willingness to include, to be inclusive in their outlook toward their fellow human beings.
Right.
So that's what he's doing with his belief. That's something he is doing.
Yeah.
Now, there are people who have a God belief that are doing that. There are people who lack a God belief that are doing that. But that's what matters.
Right.
That's what matters. It's not the great beyond. There are also atheists that aren't doing that. There are also atheists that harbor terrible views.
Yeah.
The only difference is that God belief. So I care more about that. I care more about what people actually do with their time.
Because that has a real world impact. What people
Right.
believe ultimately does. So the belief influences their actions, but it's ultimately their actions that has an impact and an effect on the environment and the society around them. And that is, like you said, I also, I don't care if you believe that the universe was created 5 minutes ago by flying unicorns that pooped rainbows. I don't care what you believe. It's what you do with that belief. If you believe that now all of a sudden I have to put a unicorn horn on my forehead and go running in the streets, then we're going to have a problem, obviously. So.
Yeah, if preaching the gospel involves going out and being cruel to people, then that's that ain't the trick. That ain't the ticket. So what do I do with the pushback? I engage. That's it. I engage, and I don't really feel called upon to deliver a sledgehammer to somebody's faith immediately. I just want to open the door. To say you can be, as Amber likes to say frequently, better than religion. You don't need to be enslaved to this. You don't need to be chained to the story. You need to be. You can do better than that. And you can do. If your imaginary friend needs to be standing by you, okay. But maybe you can. Maybe at some point you can give that up and just be. Which is why it's haters gonna hate. The Wayne Copelands of the world can go screw, because you're just an exploitative idiot that's sucking up resources and flying around your 3 airplanes and not giving a damn about the people that are paying for it.
And that kind of a person also, they suck the air out of a room. It's like, what can you actually say to a person like that? That has got that extreme a message of I would call it just hatred. Because I think it's based in, again, it's the fear-based bigotry that makes people hate like that.
Yeah, that's basically it. So that's a pushback. I mean, I've been invited to, and I have, walked in and spoke in front of an audience of Methodists. I'm not averse to engaging at all. But it's not, again, walking in with a sledgehammer doesn't usually get effective. Now I have, I've been known to be fiery. But
I
mostly,
think you also get to you learn with age to choose your battles wisely. you know, and that is
Not always, I'm afraid. Not always. We all make mistakes, and it's just a question of saying, "Oh shit, that was a bad thing to do." I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I picked the wrong target. This wasn't good.
Yeah, I missed the bullseye there.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for being so incredibly generous with your time,
You're
for
very
spending
welcome.
your Sunday morning with us. I really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, you know, if ever there's any opportunity for us to collaborate on anything, just reach out to me. And you know, we are here in South Africa, and we got your back.
All right. From Cape to Cape. There we go.
From Cape to Cape. You got it. Amazing. I'm going to play us out. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And we'll see you next Sunday afternoon, same time, same place. Bye.
Okay, well, there we go. Looks like the camera at Cape Elizabeth is icing up, so I'm gonna go clean off my car. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll put the links to the Atheist Republic Cape down in the description, and see y'all later. Thanks for coming. If you enjoy what I do, my links will also be down there. Share, like, subscribe, throw a coin in the cup, buy me a coffee, and have a wonderful day. And if you're in the Northeast, enjoy this snowstorm. Bye. Yeah.